Welcome to Learn to Live Stress-Free. This is Christine Wright with Dr. Robert Wright Jr., your go-to wellness coaches of StressFreeNow.info. Our featured guest today is Dr. Maria Nemeth, speaking about her signature topic, Hope in Action. Maria Nemeth, known as a master coach for purpose-driven leaders, helps purpose-driven people everywhere see their greatness and bring it all to life. Designed and refined over decades of work with people all over the world, her luminous life method turns timeless wisdom into practical skills that have helped tens of thousands to live and serve with clarity, focus, ease, and grace. As founder and director of the Academy for Coaching Excellence, she has trained thousands of people worldwide in the nonprofit, for-profit, and governmental sectors. She is a leading expert in leadership excellence, personal professional development, and financial empowerment whose work has been featured on The Oprah Winfrey Show. A lifelong agent of social change, Maria has contributed in areas such as civil rights, racial justice, women's empowerment, health and human services, LGBTQ rights, and climate justice. Maria is the author of two highly acclaimed books, The Energy of Money, available in 5 languages, and its follow-up, Mastering Life's Energies, both of which have given people everywhere a way to begin putting success principles into immediate practice in their lives. Additionally, Maria is the author of the forthcoming book entitled Forgiveness. This is Maria's second appearance on our show, and we are so happy to have her here with us again. Audience, welcome. Maria, thank you for being with us again.
Oh, I'm so thrilled to be with you. It's so great to be able to have this chance to sit and chat and talk about things that have real heart and significance for us, right?
Yes, very much.
Hi, Maria. Thanks for coming on the show again. And audience, you are in for a treat. We have Dr. Maria Nemeth here, who is an impresario, and she is not only knowledgeable, but she is a fun person to listen to. So get ready to kick back and relax and enjoy this show. So, Maria, to start us off, you have this concept called Hope in Action that helps people find their center, and it empowers them to find their life's purpose. Can you tell our listeners more about Hope in Action, how it works, and how you came up with that concept?
Absolutely. Just to back up, let me give you a little context for this. One of the people that I admire and have drawn inspiration from for much of my life is Mother Teresa. And it was she who said, we must have compassion, but we must put it into action. Compassion without action is nothing. She said love without action is nothing. So we must have love in action. We must have compassion in action. And when I read these words, it was like a light bulb went off for me, because I said to myself, I've worked with people for so many years and helping them open their lives and see what they're here to do and find their center. And why even do this? Because, if we find our center, if we open our lives, but we don't do anything with it, the whole thing kind of crumbles away. The only way that we can keep something alive within us is to be taking action, focused action in physical reality. So I've talked to so many people, as I know the two of you have, Bob and Christine, over the years, especially now, over the past year or so, who are seeing so much change in their life, so many things that seem to threaten the very homeostasis, the very balance, the very, in many cases, well-being of our lives. And so the question became for me, is it enough just to have hope? Hope is a very interesting word. It really, at the root of it, hope really means to be looking for the best, And if we look at it even more strongly, we can see that hope can encompass us taking a stand for the best, that this is what I stand for, and this is what I am going to foster in the world. Now, the minute we get to the word foster, we're starting to look at action, because intuitively, I think, instinctively, all of us know that when we don't take action on something that we love, when we don't take action on an insight, when we don't take action on a way of being that is opened up for us, that opening can close so quickly. So the formula for homeostasis, the formula for balance, the formula for living the life that we are meant to be living is to have hope and yet take action based upon that hope. So that became the context for a lot of the work that I do. The two of you already know that I teach the importance of taking action in our lives and going from visionary reality, we can talk about that later if you wish, into physical reality, that we are meant to take action on the things that we love. And once again, when we don't, that hope, that compassion, that sense of love, that sense of opening begins to shrivel up.
Yes. As I listen to you, Maria, it's so interesting. The minute, maybe this is a little bit of a segue, but maybe not. The minute you mentioned Mother Teresa, Bob knows where I'm going with this, I think of my late friend Charlie Winans, because Charlie used to volunteer for the Sisters of Charity. He was their cook at their New York hospice and their New York City hospice. And whenever Mother Teresa came to the city, he would pick her up because none of the sisters drive. And he taught at my after-school program, and one day he was saying something about, he has to go pick up Teresa at the airport. And one of my teachers looked at him because she thought he was joking, because he tended to be hyperbolic. And when he came in and he was showing the pictures of, himself with the sisters and the work they were doing, she was, he was telling the truth, because the way he would say certain things. But he's an example of what you talked about. He volunteered all his life. He started volunteering as a child, and he did that all the way up until, close to the end of his life. So when you talk about hope in action and mention Mother Teresa, he naturally came to my mind because that was his lived experience. He always was taking action. So I just want to thank you for doing that. You really reminded me of it. Now, you have so many wonderful concepts in your work, Maria, and I love the way you tell stories. What I notice about the work that you've been doing now, just in expanding your work and keeping it alive, is this resilience that you have in your own lived experience and in your work. Could you speak to us about how resilience plays into hope and action in your work in general? I mean, you've reinvented yourself, I think. There is a strong core, but so many ways you come alive again and again and again.
Well, thank you for mentioning that, and I actually would love to talk about that. So resilience is all about our ability to bounce back after experiencing some sort of an obstacle, some sort of something that impedes our journey, something that just sometimes comes out of the blue. It can almost feel like you're being broadsided. And so resilience is the capacity to literally, when you have experienced an obstacle or an unexpected event, to be able to go back into your center. And that has to do with who you really are in your heart. Go back into your center and then use some tools, some strategies, some skill sets to put yourself back in balance so that you can take action that is authentic, useful, effective, productive, creative. I've worked with so many people and organizations, and as you can imagine right now especially, with having to do with all the changes, you hear me stuttering in a way because there's so much I want to say on this subject. But just to pinpoint, lately there's so much that's coming at us and so quickly, the question becomes, when we get knocked off center, how do we return to center as quickly as possible? I've worked with organizations and we speak to this very phenomenon. For instance, one day you're thinking you're going to be able to meet a production schedule. I worked recently with a corporation, and they were depending upon a certain part being shipped to them from overseas. And something broke down. The ship didn't make the delivery, and here they had promises for delivery of their product to some vendors. What do you do at that point? And for them, of course, it was literally returning back to their mission, their vision, their values, their ability to call the vendors, be in relationship with them very quickly, and make new delivery dates in a way that didn't cause a crisis all down the line. It's the same thing with us individually. As you know, about 9 years ago now, I was treated for breast cancer. And the story it's amazing. I went and had a cyst removed from my breast. And this was a cyst that I'd had mammograms with for a couple years. They said, this is a cyst, don't worry about it. You can have it removed at your leisure. And there was a moment in which I noticed something changing in the cyst. So bottom line, I went and had it removed. The doctor said, hey, it looks really great, no problem. And just because we have to do this, I'm going to send it to the lab for biopsy. Well, I'm at a conference 10 days later, and I get a call from the doctor who said, Maria, the cyst was really turning into a tumor. It is malignant. And of course, that word malignant, I mean, you can imagine what comes up for you. And I think many listeners who are listening to me right now, if you have had this experience, or if you've had someone in your family or friends who have had the experience, you know the shock that can happen with just the use of certain words. And in this case, for me, it was malignant. And from then on, an incredible journey opened in front of me that was not there prior to me hearing that word. And I remember being thrown off of my center, being, shocked, dismayed. And at some point, and this is an important story regarding resilience because it involves support. At some point, some friends gathered with me, and we began to practice some of the skill sets that I had been teaching for a number of years about how to get back to your center. And incidentally, for any people who are interested in some of those skill sets, I'll be talking to you later today about something I'd like to offer to you that will help in that way. But being able to sit with friends, remembering who I am, I could go through this journey. It was not pleasant because I had intense chemotherapy and radiation. However, being steady in what I knew to practice, I came through it. It was almost, Christine and Bob, it was almost as though the chemotherapy and radiation had not only taken care of the cancer itself, but it kind of burned away a lot of the way that I was relating to my life up until that point. It's like what emerged was something much more true to who I am without pretense. And because there's no room for pretense when you've lost 30 pounds, you're bald, you look terrible. I mean, you can't have any pretense at that point. But to tell you that it was a wonderful experience would be lying to you. To tell you it was a very powerful experience, yes. It gave me the chance to practice the things that I had been teaching for so many years. So the bottom line with resilience, it doesn't mean that stuff won't happen to you in life, because you and I know that our lives, we're a hero's journey. And part of the hero's development is to meet up with obstacles, things that are absolutely unpredictable, and to learn how to face those obstacles in such a way that we grow and we become truly more of who we're meant to be. So my life has been and continues to be dedicated to giving people some skill sets that I've learned over life that are designed to help them return to this sense of homeostasis, balance, and out of that, to be able to continue to go for their goals and dreams without giving up on them. So wow. This is a long story, and I hope it helps listeners who've heard it.
I think it definitely will, Maria, and that's a perfect example of resilience. As you said, it doesn't mean that things won't happen. They will, and, it's unfortunate. They will and they do, but when you have the skill sets and, as you said, support, that you gathered people around you and you practice the work that you have developed, and that brought you through. And I think that is such a truly touching and wonderful story, and I want to thank you for sharing that with our audience. Maria, when I took your course a few years back in Atlanta, I felt that in your work, that the way I was coming in to your weekend, the Thriving Change Makers course, which I knew was Mastering Life's Energies, and the way I left was completely different. And that course, I really think, and I've said it ever since I've taken it, and you now have that as part of your model, was life-changing for me. And I don't know quite how you came, the nuances of developing it, but I would love it if you would talk about that course. And certainly the way it affected me, I think it's the way it affected many people to look at your website. Could you talk a bit about that course and how it really does change lives?
I'd love to do it, and I want to start off by saying something that's really at the heart of the matter for me. That course, it's called Mastering Life's Energies, and it's also called the Thriving Changemaker Intensive. I can tell you why it has two titles in a moment, but just pinpointing on that course, it's really, it has been my baby for over 37 years. It started out because I'd had this one incident involving me and my relationship with money, which, as you know, and we could talk about that later if need be, I was the victim of a Ponzi scheme and lost some money and was so embarrassed by it. And I knew that if I didn't wake myself up, that I'd be doing the same things over and over again. I imagine in your own life that you do some things and it produces the same result, and you say, I'm never going to do that again. And then you find yourself doing it again. And then you say, this time I really won't do it again. And yet you do it again. And I knew that my life would turn out regarding money in that sort of way unless I woke myself up. So I gathered 22 friends, this is 37 years ago, and I said, I am going to transform my relationship with money. I don't know how, but I'm going to do it, and I invite you to come along with me, because together we will do this. Now, up until that time, I had been studying with some people who were really masters in what they did. One person, this was 1981, quite a long while ago. I took something called the S training from Werner Erhard, and Werner was and still is one of the most brilliant men I have ever met. And I decided that I wanted to learn from him. So for about 3 years, I would attend anything that I could that he was leading because I wanted to see. Now, and this was the question, where is his vision? What is he looking at? What is the horizon that he's looking at such that the things he's saying come out of his mouth? You see, I wasn't interested in what was coming out of his mouth so much, although it was brilliant. I was fascinated by the horizon that he was looking toward. And I attended courses and seminars, spoke with him personally, and attended seminars with other people who I thought were brilliant. And I came away with some principles that I said to myself, now, how can I take these principles and apply them to my relationship with money so that I and those around me will have a breakthrough? So originally it had to do with the energy of money. And that was 37 years ago. And you can imagine, I've been leading that course almost every year. The only times I didn't was for a year when I was being treated for cancer because I didn't have the energy to be a conduit of the kind of energy that you need in order to lead that course. But I would say the first 8 years, I was experimenting, and I have honored the people who've been my guinea pigs again and again and again, because there were a couple thousand people at that point who, I kept tweaking, I kept looking, what's working, what isn't working, how can I make this work? And about 20 years ago, everything clicked in. I think if you work at something long enough and are looking for what's missing, what can I bring present, and you look at the results that people are getting, because believe me, in the early days, it was not necessarily a life-changing experience for people. People would come away thinking, this is great, this is good, but I never heard life-changing, and it was only after I had led it for quite a few years that those words were starting to come out of people's mouths. So I knew that I hit it. And so about 20 years ago, maybe 25 years ago, everything clicked. And I began looking at not just the energy of money, but all the 6 kinds of energy that we need. And you might ask, well, how did you know there were 6 kinds of energy? Because I kept trying it out with people, and it worked. That's all I know, is it worked. So
it definitely did. It definitely did, Maria.
And, the 6 kinds of energy, because I know our listeners are probably curious at this moment, and then I'll be quiet and have you ask me another question if you're interested in it. But the 6 kinds of energy: money, time, physical vitality, creativity, enjoyment, and relationship. And when I saw those 6 energies and when I started teaching about those 6 energies, that's when people's lives began to transform. So that's a long-winded answer to your question.
Well, thank you, and it's a very complete answer, and certainly I'd say to my listeners, if you get the chance, it's a great opportunity to take that course. Now, Maria, we will continue our conversation in a moment. We'll take a short break on Learn to Live Stress-Free, Today we have as our special featured guest Dr. Maria Nemeth, founder and director of the Academy for Coaching Excellence.
Hi, I'm Dr. Robert Wright Jr., the stress relief doctor, co-host of the Learn to Live Stress-Free podcast series. I'm an author, speaker, and stress management wellness coach. My published study is the first to show the connection between stress reduction, grief recovery, nitric oxide spiking, and the relaxation response. And my practical application of this knowledge helps you relieve the stresses of everyday life. I have the tools to dissolve your pain points quickly and effectively. Email me to find out how you can start to feel better now at stressfreenow.info/contact. That's stressfreenow.info/contact. Have you been procrastinating about completing an important project or pursuing a treasured dream? Christine Wright specializes in helping her coaching clients to lay out clear, elegant strategies. She shows you how to quickly build your confidence to uncover and eliminate your habitual patterns of resistance and self-sabotage. Christine helps you discover those meaningful insights that will get you to do what works so you can celebrate your successes. Go to stressfreenow.info/contact to let Christine know that you're ready to live your ideal life now. Again, that's stressfreenow.info/contact.
Welcome back to Learn to Live Stress-Free as we continue our conversation with Dr. Maria Nemeth speaking about hope in action.
Maria, I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show. And while you were giving your answer about the 6 energies, I just wanted you to repeat what the 6 energies are, because I was trying to write them down. Even though I've read your book and I know what they are, I was trying to write fast. So I imagine that there are people in our audience that they didn't have the pen handy, or they weren't writing fast enough. So I got the first 3, which, you talked about money, you talked about time, and physical vitality. So what is 4, 5, and 6 for any audience members that may want to get that complete list again?
The next one is creativity.
Creativity, yes.
Yes, we all have a creative spark, and when we learn how to use that energy, life begins to open up for us. And then there is enjoyment. And people have asked me over the years, what do you mean enjoyment? Well, whatever you truly enjoy to do naturally prospers in front of you. So enjoyment is very, very important. And then relationship. And in relationship, we include support, like the support of my buddies who were there when I was first told about my cancer diagnosis.
Great, Maria. Thank you for that clarification. So, as you already know, and as any of our listeners know, that with the hectic pace of life today, it can feel like it's just a continual rat race. And so many people, Maria, are either close to burned out or already burned out. Can you tell our listeners what tools you offer in your programs that lessens people's stress, pain, or anxiety, or can help prevent people getting to the level of exhaustion or insomnia, sleep deprivation, etc.?
I'd be happy to do that, Bob, and thank you for that question. So what I'd like to do now is go to a different level of talking about this than I have been speaking about up until now. And part of my training, I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, got my PhD at UCLA. One of my areas of specialty in those days was neurophysiology. And I've always been interested in how the brain works. Now, I want to say something to you, and I think you've had people on your podcast who have said something like this before, but I want to say this, and I'm going to repeat it a couple times, so I'm preparing everybody for this, okay? So, you are not your brain. I'm going to say that again. You are not your brain. You have a brain. You have 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth, 2 kidneys in most cases, a stomach, and a brain. Your brain is an organ. It's the most gloriously complicated organ in the whole world, but it is nevertheless an organ, and it can be developed. You know, neuroscience now is indicating that you and I can literally change how our brain looks. For instance, the brains of people who meditate over time begin to look different than the brains of people who do not. Now, I'm saying this because in order to really have an effect upon your life, it's important to see that you have a brain. Your brain does not have you. You have a brain. You are not your brain. You have the ability to do things for your brain so that it doesn't suffer so much. And when our brains suffer, we experience anxiety, overwhelm, all the ills that nowadays more and more of us are going through. So this is the first premise. If any of you who are listening to me can write that down, I am not my brain. If you just can write that down, consider it for a moment. The second thing, you must have compassion for this brain of yours. You must have compassion. Have compassion for your brain. What does that mean? Well, neuroscience is now seeing that our brain has not appreciably changed much over 100,000 years. So we have pretty much the same brain that our ancestors 100,000 years ago had. You know, we tend to think of people who lived in 3, 4, 5, 600 years ago, maybe even 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. We tend to think about them as possibly not as bright as we are. You know, we have this kind of look at people who've lived in ages past. But if you consider that our brothers and sisters 100,000 years ago had pretty much the same kind of brain that we do, then you've got to ask yourself this following question: How the heck did they survive? How did they survive? Now, one of the ways they survived was the following. Imagine, Bob, that you and I are living in a cave together, okay? And we decide one morning we're going to go outside, and I'm going to ask you a question, Bob, and so get ready for it. You and I are walking outside of our cave, and we want to have breakfast. So the minute we step outside of the cave into the sunlight, what is the first thing our brain is going to look for? What's your answer, Bob?
The brain is scanning the environment for threats.
You got it. The first thing our brain is going to look for is danger. Because you see, if we don't look for threats before treats, that is to say our breakfast, we may not be alive long enough to even enjoy our treat. So you and I have a brain that scans for danger before anything else. Okay? Now, many people have actually given it a name. Some people call it the negativity bias. I call it the monkey mind, which is a Buddhist term. It stands for that aspect of the mind that's always looking for danger and chattering at us. But there you have it. You have a brain that first looks for danger. Now, we don't have to look out for woolly mammoths. We don't have to look out for saber-toothed cats. And as a matter of fact, I love the saying from Mark Twain. He says, "I'm an old man and I've lived through many trials and tribulations, most of which never, ever happened." Because our brain is anticipating danger when there may be none. So the first thing we look at when we see that our brain is an organ, it's important for us to be compassionate with this organ. And the first thing our poor brain is looking for is danger. Now, do we, in our consciousness, have to be dragged around every time this brain is looking for danger? The answer is no. The first thing that you've got to be willing to do is to simply observe your brain. And this is really difficult for some, easier for others. Observe the nature of your thoughts. And let me give you an example. Are your thoughts, do they have a sharpness to them? Is the energy kind of a raw energy, and it's hot, and it can even be kind of spiky, and there's a sense of you have to think this thought, because if you don't, something bad is going to happen. And so the nature of the thought itself is very impelling and compelling. Or are you thinking a thought which is a bit more spacious, which has a little kind of a sense of humor, maybe, which maybe, whereas that first kind of thought screams at you, this second sort of thought may whisper in your ear. And it's very compassionate. As I said, there's a gentle humor about it. And it only concerns itself with who you are now and the next sweet step to take. It doesn't really talk much about the future, because as many metaphysicians have told us over the years, looking at the future, trying to create the future, is really not what we're meant to be doing. Because if I try to create how a future has to look, then what happens when I come up against these obstacles? But no, the voice of wisdom has you look more at who you truly are. There's a sense that all is well. There's this sense of what is the next authentic action to take. And believe me, I've worked with people who are CEOs of big corporations, and I've worked with people who have been in the Army. I'm so grateful to be working with a lot of folks in Sweden now. I go there 2 or 3 times a year to teach and work with leaders. And it doesn't matter where you are in life or whether you are a leader or not. The brain acts pretty much the same way. So the question becomes, which kinds of thoughts do you prefer to be following? The ones that have this worry, doubt, fear, impelling, you've got to do this now or else something bad is going to happen, or it'll never work? Or are you more interested in listening to this small, sweet voice which declares all is well, and which might talk with you just about the next step to take? The next. Yes, you're going into mergers and acquisitions in your business, and everybody is yelling and people aren't getting along and you're feeling overwhelmed or overwrought. Yes. And the voice of wisdom asks, now, what's the next small, sweet step? So whichever one I am interested in living with is the one that's going to determine the quality of my life. Am I going to be overworked, overwrought, overwhelmed, or am I going to be centered in the midst of the swirl of activity and information? And make no mistake, research has shown that there is more information in the Sunday New York Times newspaper, there's more information than a person in the early 1900s needed to know in his or her whole life. So am I going to become a victim of information, or am I going to train my brain to be able to sift through the information that is relevant and the information that isn't? And so these steps that I've just talked to you about are steps that are important to take yourself through before you can even look at the next steps, like how am I going to live my life such that I don't allow my brain, this precious, sweet, 100,000-year-old brain, to get overwrought.
Great, Maria. I was listening to you. You have opened the door to at least 5 different podcasts, future podcasts, because once you open the door to brain plasticity, epigenetic solutions, and the issue that you just raised was just such a high level of synchronicity, because I was thinking about, I had read a study that talked about how a teenager today receives more information in 24 hours than a person that lived in 1900 experiencing their whole lifetime. And then as I was thinking that, you started talking about that. So I think that was great. So I want to thank you for being our featured guest today. And I know our audience has enjoyed listening to you. And thank you again for coming on the show today.
Yes, thank
Absolutely.
you, Maria. We really appreciate it. And we would love if you would tell our audience, the best way that they can get in touch with you and learn more about you. And I believe you also have a free offering for our listeners.
Yeah, I have a free offering, and the purpose of it is to give you a way to begin to center in and focus on what's important to you as that antidote to overwhelm, overwork. And it's also a way that points you toward hope in action. It's called the Life's Intention Blueprint, or the Life Blueprint, however we want to put it. But you can get it by going to acecoachtraining.com. That's ACE, A-C-E, coachtraining.com /blueprint. acecoachtraining.com /blueprint. And you'll get something called the Life Blueprint. And it's really an important way to begin to center you in to the kind of life you truly want to live.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Maria. So, audience, you can check out Maria's offering, her Life Blueprint, at acecoachtraining.com. That's A-C-E, acecoachtraining.com /blueprint. And that is also her website, acecoachtraining.com. And you can also email programs at acecoachtraining.com to learn more.
Wonderful. Maria, what final thoughts or key idea would you like our audience to take away from today's broadcast?
Well, the basic thing that I'd like you to take away with is consider the possibility that there is absolutely nothing wrong with you. Absolutely nothing wrong. And if you are not as successful as you wish to be, it's only because you haven't yet attained certain skill sets. There's nothing wrong with you or your ideas. Nothing. Just go out, be willing to attain skill sets. Whether you work with me at Ace Coach Training or not, go and learn those skill sets and then use them.
Wonderful, Maria. thank you so much for your final comments, and I know our audience really appreciated that. So thank you, audience, for listening, and thank you, Maria, so much for being our featured guest today. Audience, wherever you are, whatever time zone you're in, I want to thank you again and let you know how much we appreciate your presence, and we certainly trust that you got some benefit from the information that was delivered in today's show by Dr. Maria Nemeth. Of course, as always, we look forward to and welcome receiving your comments about our show. You can let us know if there are any additional topics you'd like us to cover, or if there's a guest you'd like us to invite back because you enjoyed them, like Dr. Nemeth. Please contact us through our website with your feedback and suggestions. Remember, listeners, if you'd like to experience the same benefits our coaching clients get with us, including learning how you can get more results in your day and easy ways to dissolve your chronic pain, stress, and anxiety, then give us a call at 954-900-2179. Mention that you heard our Stress-Free podcast show, and you'll receive a free gift from us. Call today to schedule your appointment. For Christine Wright, this is Dr. Robert Wright, Jr. of StressFreeNow.info. Until next time, be safe and be well.